Uh, Good morning. Welcome back from the holiday. I hope everybody had a good one. And welcome to our virtual speaker series, the State of Marin, with soon to be Assembly Member Damon Connolly. I'm Romeo Arrieta, Chief Executive Officer at the Marin Realtors. This is the fourth and final speaker series this year. We have a full agenda today, and I look forward to getting into it. But as always, want to get through a couple of housekeeping notes that I want to share. This is a webinar, so everybody's muted by default. I ask if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A feature, and we'll do our best to get to them throughout the meeting. There will be a little bit of time dedicated towards the end for Q&A. I'd like to recognize our 2022 President Logan Link and all of our board of directors and committee members and volunteers who might be joining us. I'm going to put in a plug to say that our volunteer application is open through right now. It's last call. I know that it ran in the rundown, so if you are interested in serving on a committee, go ahead and let us know. Click that link in the rundown. I'm just going to do a little disclaimer here before I turn it over to Logan. Just the views expressed by our guests are their own and not necessarily those of the Marin Realtors. Nothing should be taken as legal advice or tax advice. As always, can ask your broker or manager or any relevant professionals if you have any questions about those. Also, this event is being recorded. So with all of that legalese and out of the way, I'm going to pass it over to Logan.
All right. Thank you, Romeo. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I also hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I love that we're starting the Monday, like after this long weekend, in such a great and what I think will be a super energizing and interesting way. So thank you for showing up for that. All right. So as Romeo said, and maybe I just said this, I'm Logan Link. I'm your 2022 president. And before we get started, I would like to thank our sponsor, Mary Jo LaFay of Mutual of Omaha. So we'll just hear a quick message from Mary Jo, and then we will jump right into our conversation with Damon. All right, Mary Jo.
Thank you very much, Logan, and everybody on the panel today. Thanks for having me again. It's always great to be a sponsor for MAR. First of all, I want to welcome a new sponsor or member, Sean Murphy. He just moved from Guarantee Rate to Bank of the West, and he has some awesome rates. So I just want to give a shout out to Sean. Big move in his career, and I'm really excited to have him as a resource. So I also want to thank all the realtors for all the support this year and for calling me when you need professionals to help with your team and getting your clients what they need. I do belong to Provisors, which is a network of high-level professionals, a lot of real estate, bankruptcy attorneys, estate planners, and so forth. And I always put myself out there as a resource for you to find who you need to help your clients in difficult situations. So I'm always happy to field those calls and connect you with the right person. And I just want to say, I spoke on our State of the Union for a Mutual of Omaha reverse mortgage last Friday. And one of the things they had me talk about was kind of what's important for rebuilding and kind of, taking this time where things are a little slower to plant more seeds and really create the business that now we have a little more time to work on. So one of those things that I've found investing my time recently and really reconnecting with people that maybe we didn't spend so much time connecting with during the pandemic. We were all super busy. I was doing a lot of refinances from one reverse mortgage to a lower rate reverse mortgage to get people more money. And I know you guys were fielding 10s and 20, offers on each deal, on each sale. So now we all have a little breathing room to really kind of set the stage and build our business and invest in those things that are going to bring us the financial security that we're all looking for. So I just want to say, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm always happy to do webinars or in-person presentations. I'm really enjoying getting out and meeting with people one-on-one and kind of going over how I can help them. And one of the things I put together for the realtors this year and members of MAR is going to be a seminar webinar for educational purposes. It'll be on Tuesday, the 13th of December at 11 a.m. And I'll be sending out a link to register for that. And I have 3 co-speakers. So we're going to be a panel of 4 talking about using niche financing and conventional financing and all the updates on reverse mortgage, private money, conventional lending. And also we'll have Shanae Mabry, many of you know, to talk about 1031s and how to help your clients exit a property without a huge capital gain tax bill, so they'll have the resources to buy their next property. And so I'm hoping you can attend. It's going to be a 1 hour with Q&A at the end. And so you can all bring your questions on all those topics. And I just want to say happy holidays to everyone. I'm here when you need me, or if you need someone else, I can help connect you with them. And I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday, the 13th, if you want to save the date on your calendar, 11 a.m. to 12:15. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Jo. I think the seminar on the 13th will be very interesting. I feel like you're so on point when you say that right now is a great time for us to hone in on our skills and really lean into education a little bit seasonally, and also where the market is. Looking at it as an opportunity is so great, and especially when it comes to financing and 1031 exchanges. So thank you for that. And everyone, we will have that in the rundown, which comes on Mondays. So keep an eye for the link for that. All right. Okay. Without further ado, I am excited to introduce Damon Connolly, and we will have a little Q&A segment at the end. So I know Romeo mentioned this at the beginning, but feel free to type your questions into the Q&A as we're speaking, and we will hopefully get to most, if not all of them. So Damon, thank you for joining us. I'll just give a quick little summary of some of your impressive background, and then we'll let you elaborate a bit. But if Damon looks familiar to most of you, it's because he has been a major leader in Marin County for over 2 decades. So Damon is a Bay Area native, a San Rafael resident, and has most recently served on the Board of Supervisors for Marin County. Actually, is technically still serving for a couple more weeks. And prior to that, as Vice Mayor of San Rafael, School Board President, California Deputy Attorney General. He's also part of lots of different committees and commissions related to water, housing, conservation, and he is our representative on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. So Damon has a great long list of good accomplishments, and he has recently stepped up and been elected into the role of California State Assembly Representative for Marin County and Sonoma. Damon, is there anything else you would like to add to that about kind of where you've been, what these past couple of decades of service have looked like for you?
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Logan. And really just wanted to start by thanking everyone. What an amazing opportunity to be able to speak with the realtors. So this is the first group I'm speaking with in this new role, and couldn't be happier that that's the case. The realtors have been amazing supporters throughout the years, partners in tackling community issues together, all the way back to the school board days and city council, and most recently supervisor. And also this campaign. It was a hard fought one. We can talk a little bit about what an assembly member does, but really wanted to give a shout out to so many folks on this call. It's great to see so many friends, people who stepped up, gave of your time, your resources, your support, your advice during this campaign. And of course, both MAR and NORBAR endorsed my campaign. We were able to put together a really cool coalition, I'll call it, in this 2-county race of environmentalists, business folks, the Farm Bureau, labor, community groups, and really got the job done. So as was mentioned, I'm still your supervisor for about another week. And then I get sworn in as your assembly member to represent the 12th district, which is all of Marin County and southern Sonoma County up to Highway 12 on December 5th. But we're already hitting the ground running. A little bit of time off for turkeys, so to speak. But we have already been involved in picking a new speaker of the assembly. That occurred 2 days after Election Day. Believe it or not, we are hiring staff, getting trained. And then if anyone would like to watch the swearing in next Monday at noon, that'll be on the Assembly channel, Cal channel, and we'll be able to do that. But Logan, tying in your point, really the local experience I've had, the connections with the community, the relationships really formed the basis as to why I even ran for this office. And the opportunity kind of arose when our current assembly member, Mark Levine, decided to run for another office, a little bit short of his term limit. And that created an opening. And my two daughters are a little bit older right now, in their 20s. My wife was on board, so the timing was really good. And I think, as I mentioned, the community really came together. So supervisor is a job I love. It's been really hands-on, from potholes to major issues around housing and transportation. But this is also something I've always been interested in doing, more at the policy level. But I unabashedly ran to be our local voice in Sacramento. And I think that theme really resonated with folks, combined with the experience and combined with the ability to get a lot better known in Sonoma County. That was really an issue that I think played out well over the course of the campaign. And that was by virtue of literally spending part of every day between June, when the primary was over, through the November election up in Sonoma County, and really got to know that community and those residents well also.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, so as everyone probably knows, serving on the Board of Supervisors, at least from my perspective, is a job that would be so fascinating because it kind of is like an umbrella. The Board of Supervisors is like an umbrella that covers the entire county. Even our cities are part of the county, right? And the Board of Supervisors is comprised of 5 supervisors, is that right? Who each represent a different district, but are talking about all of the issues that happen in all of the different districts. So that's a major education in everything, Marin. And for how long have you been serving on the Board of Supervisors?
So 8 years. So basically wrapping up my second term, and that was a real personal decision, right? Because it's a job I love. So effectively, I decided to pass up on re-election to supervisor to do this. The good news is one of my aides, Mary Sackett, who many of you may know, stepped up and ran, and Mary won. So Mary will be starting January 10th.
Yeah.
I will be resigning December 4th. So technically the governor who appoints supervisors during vacancies could appoint Mary for a month, or we may just have to figure out what to do without a supervisor for a month.
We'll just do all kinds of crazy things for the month of December, and then Mary will come in and get it under control. I think that's a great, great plan. All right, so you've been serving on the Board of Supervisors for 8 years, and then you've gone through this entire year of campaigning and deep diving into Marin, which you've already been deeply into, and then also Sonoma, bringing that together, achieving victory, and now you're going up to the state level. What do you see as like the biggest changes and transitions? Is it feeling different already, a kind of a mindset shift, or what's the main change?
Yeah, no, it's really a different perspective, but again, important to kind of continue to emphasize, informed by the same things, and that is what's best for our local communities. And there's oftentimes issues we're grappling with, right? Like water, fire, housing, homelessness, all issues that realtors are very familiar with. Those start at the local level, but there's inevitably a state level component, and that can happen in a couple ways. One is the budget. And making sure that our communities have their fair share of resources coming back to support policy solutions in each of those areas. But the other piece is really setting state level policy. And we're kind of entering an interesting time period right now, starting with a lot of the legislature is going to be new. This is literally, in recent memory, probably the second largest incoming class of new people that the legislature will have. The largest was 2012, but this isn't far behind, where a good 25% of the legislature will be new, at least the assembly. So to me, that is really significant right now. We also know that we're going from a time period where there was much optimism and discussion around budget surpluses, how quickly that changes. We are now looking at least we're being told, a $25 billion state budget deficit the first year that I will be up there. So grappling with that. And the good news is I think the state is fairly well positioned with some prudent reserves that have been put in place with voter support over the last several years, as well as really allocating surplus amounts to one-time funding, just to be very cautious around that. We may also be embarking on a special session right out of the box on December 5th, and that is being called by the governor, as far as I understand, around the issue of gas and oil prices. So just providing relief around that and some strategies around keeping that issue under control for consumers around the state. So that's going to be interesting. Beyond that, I think a lot of the issues I'm currently working on will inform approaches that we can pursue at the state level. And we can get into that a little bit more around wildfire prevention, fire or water, and homelessness. Many of these issues are teed up statewide and certainly in the North Bay. And at the same time, and I think going to your question, there are many issues maybe that Sonoma County has a little bit different from Marin, right? Or a different kind of mindset around approaches. So that's exciting to me. And it was interesting. I came in, so in the primary, many of you may recall, I came in first overall in a 4 Democrat race, but came in a distant second in Sonoma County, like lost Sonoma by probably 8 or 9 points. And as I was telling folks after that, I got the memo, right? So that's when it was kind of the full court charm offensive, if you will, and really deep dive into Sonoma County. And it looks like I'm going to end up winning Sonoma County by about 6 to 7 points, as well as winning Marin County. So that was really gratifying.
That's great. See, so I think that's interesting, the combination of Marin County and Sonoma, because when we think about the state level, right, it's so easy to get so absorbed into what we're talking about within Marin, which is, of course, hugely important, right? But when we think about the state, California is a big state, Marin is a tiny county, right? And it does seem that just growing up here and in years past, there hasn't been that much collaboration between Marin and Sonoma, but really kind of looking at the issues that both counties have and where they overlap and where solutions could overlap, and really working together and bringing things up to the state in that way strikes me as maybe a more effective way to actually have our voice heard. Is that something that you're seeing as you're hearing about the issues that constituents have in both areas? Or
I think that's very true. And first of all, let's start with the fact that it is the 2 best counties in the state, right?
Obviously.
So let's just get that out of the way. If you're going to represent a district, yeah, Marin and Sonoma, that's all good. So you're absolutely right, though, because we're smaller counties, and I've seen this even in my regional work right now as one of your MTC commissioners, you've got to build coalitions. And particularly, I think in Marin's case, in Sacramento, and this is well known, we have a certain reputation, right? What folks don't recognize up there is that we have many, if not all, of the same major issues that other communities face. And that thus we need to pursue solutions, but we can't do it alone. We've got to break through kind of that stereotype, if you will, up there. Marin and Sonoma share many issues, but they also have differences, and also, I think, as we all know as well, oftentimes don't recognize the commonality. So I think that's going to be one of my jobs, is continue to build on those local relationships I have in both counties. And I think the way we're going to be effective, the way we're going to get things done, is to work together. So I'm viewing this completely as a unified district involving two counties. As I said, I think it goes without saying, to get stuff done, particularly on larger issues, it's going to even go beyond that and build regional coalitions, relationships at the state level. So that's one thing I'm very much interested in this job for, is to do that. I think it's part of my skill set to bring that to the table. So, and I'll continue to learn more about Sonoma in particular, but even Marin, just over the last many years, as you mentioned, my focus was primarily San Rafael. And that really has broadened now as well.
Interesting. So going into 2023 and landing in Sacramento, do you have any sense of what the hot issues will be next year? Like, if you were going to say two or three hot topics that we'll all be talking about from a state perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be no surprise to your members. I think water is huge right now. That was probably top 2 or 3 issues in Marin, and top 1 issue in Sonoma. As you know, in that county, a lot of issues with wells and groundwater, and a little bit more of an ag presence in a larger sense, as well as changing landscapes in terms of cities up there. Wildfire prevention, I would say issue 1, certainly in Marin, and top 2 in Sonoma County. So ensuring that our communities have the resources so that folks can protect their own homes, that neighborhoods and communities can come together, as we're doing a really good job of, I think, in both counties. But having the resources to do that. I think that message really resonated in my campaign. Number 3, and this will be no surprise because it's not just us, it's everywhere statewide, and that is homelessness. It ties into the larger issue of housing overall, and the right balance we need to strike around that. But homelessness in particular, there was a well-publicized summit, if you will, recently between Governor Newsom and local officials from around the state. The governor originally held back on $1 billion in homelessness funding. I think he justifiably has been lighting a fire under localities on what needs to be done in terms of tackling this. We're resolving those issues. And there's a couple of really critical pieces to homelessness right now. One is the legislature passed this past session, and the governor signed legislation to establish what's called the Care Court. This will be an important tool that will enable people who see loved ones or patients or those seeking services in crisis, to be able to have a court intervene to ensure that there's a treatment plan in place. But there are a number of issues that'll need to be worked through. And this is where counties and the state will need to partner around resources toward implementation, making sure that civil liberties are protected as well. But that's something I would have voted for. And I think is going to be a key part of our early job in making sure that that is implemented well, working with our local partners. The second is Project Homekey, which has been a state program that allows localities to buy up motels or underutilized office space and other facilities to house the homeless as part of our permanent supportive housing program. So this, I think, was a really good state program. It needs to be strengthened and continued. So both Marin and Sonoma have been utilizing that program, I think, effectively, not without controversy, right? As we all know, that site in Larkspur is one where we heard a lot of pushback. I happen to think it's going to be a really good site, but it's going to require working with the community through issues around a safety plan, ensuring that impacts of the site can be effectively dealt with. And of course, getting folks the services they need. That's what this is all about. It's a combination of compassion, but firmness. No one should be living under the freeway. No one should be in an encampment in a park. We have to ensure that these public spaces are being used in the ways they were intended, but that we get folks with a roof over their head and the services they need as well. And realtors certainly are an important part of that conversation.
And we have one Project Homekey site already in action in Marin, correct? The one in Corte Madera?
Three,
really?
yeah.
Okay.
So there's a motel in Corte Madera, which has kind of been held out as a model because there again, neighbors in particular were very unsure about it, but they were invited into the process and ultimately got on board. And that's kind of been a model. If you want to check it out, it's the former motel near Marin Joe's that's now open. The office building at the corner of Kerner and Bellum is being transitioned into a Project Homekey permanent supportive housing site. And now the one I think you were referring to, the Larkspur one.
Yeah, interesting.
Never in general, yeah.
So homelessness, large topic for next year as it was this year as well. And then what about the topic of housing? I feel like that's where state and local are really mixing in an interesting way. So as you know, and as everyone here probably knows, the state of California has, of course, declared a housing crisis, which is something that we're very close to in our job here. And so the state has essentially assigned via regional groups. They've assigned numbers to each jurisdiction. So each county and each city of how many units we need to provide, or we need to at least provide space for within the next 7 years. And this is something that's really been happening behind the scenes in Marin this year. Different cities and counties have been putting together what we call the housing element. And the numbers of units that we need to accommodate in Marin for the state is a lot. Like a lot of our smaller towns, the numbers are maybe 800 new units in the next 7 years. And I know many of the cities and counties actually have their housing elements into the state right now for review. It feels to me like one of those topics that those of us who are paying close attention, we've been paying attention to it for like 2 years. But those who maybe aren't paying quite as close of attention, I think will become very aware of it in the next year. How do you think Marin communities are going to perform from the perspective of the state? Do you think the housing will actually be built? What are your thoughts surrounding all of that?
Yeah, no, and thank you for that. I know it's a huge topic. And it's one I've been living and breathing as one of your local representatives over the past, well, many years, but particularly on the new round of the housing element over the past year. The county has been grappling with it in terms of unincorporated areas, but certainly every city and town in Marin has as well. And I think there is a disconnect. I mean, I think everyone recognizes we need to find housing solutions, particularly around affordability. And I know the realtors get that. Yet there's also a sense of, is the state really in tune with local needs? In that regard, the numbers being put on local communities are high. And oftentimes the feeling is they're not tethered necessarily to water availability or certainly issues around building in high fire zones, something we do not want to do. I think everyone would agree to. So that's the dichotomy. And on one hand, you have a need. I'm pretty proud of efforts Marin is doing in that regard. And certainly we need to work with the state as a partner. But I think we have to be mindful of state overreach. And I think that resonated in my campaign. One example I could see is SB 9, which is designed to provide some housing around the so-called missing middle. That having been said, the law as it stands creates issues with, are we really talking about high fire zones? So I could see cleanup legislation or amendments toward bills like that. That's something I would really want the realtors' input on. So I think bringing really the Marin and North Bay perspective to the housing discussion is going to be hugely important. We want to continue to protect open space, as an example, while we provide housing opportunities. I think Marin has been a leader in many ways. If you look at issues like accessory dwelling units, right, or junior accessory dwelling units, converting underutilized commercial space into housing. I think big opportunity sites in that regard would include Northgate Mall, as an example, kind of reimagining that. The Fireman's Fund office complex in Novato is another great site, and really making new development make sense, make it near effective transit, and again, make it available to a range of incomes, I think would be the goal. So state as a partner is what I'm envisioning, and including, we oftentimes see that the real problem with affordability projects is that funding gap, right, or the financing challenges. That's where I believe the state can come in as a partner, among other ways.
I like that. The state is a partner. Yeah, that's a good one. So, okay, so we're in this time where currently we have the numbers assigned to our county. And from what you're saying here, it sounds like maybe part of what will be happening in the assembly in the next year is clean up to these bills and changing that a little bit to kind of incorporate the fact that we do have considerations like water and fire. I just feel like representing Marin and Sonoma is so interesting because we kind of have all of the problems, but it's also such a great place. But like to strike this balance between how to have enough water for everyone, how to make evacuation routes safe, how to manage our wildfires, how to preserve our open space, how to stick to some of our like longtime Bay Area principles, like caring about climate change, but then also providing housing, and then also assisting our homeless population. That's a lot. And it's a lot of interesting.
Otherwise it's a really easy job. Yeah.
Totally. Right. Exactly. But it's funny.
No, that's what's appealing to me. And that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Exactly.
So really bringing that to the state level. But that was a great summary. It's just all the competing opportunities, frankly, but challenges. And I think Marin and Sonoma at our best are leaders in those issues. Like, you mentioned evacuation routes, the fact that we have the most fire-wise communities of any county in the nation, right? Because people get that, they want to be proactive. And that's oftentimes what I'm talking to folks about in their living rooms is, hey, when the next fire comes, where is that evacuation route going to be, as an example? Yeah.
All right. When we look at all of the issues in a compartmentalized way, it's super simple. And then we put them all together and it's crazy and interesting. So, okay. So hearing you say this now is interesting because it sounds to me though, like maybe some of these numbers that have been assigned or some of the kind of state mandated things that have come through will continue to shift and change. I mean, do you think that the units that have been assigned to Marin County in the next 7 years, do you think they'll actually get built? Do you feel like we're in a place where we will be building and kind of providing more units, or?
We will be providing more units. The question is a good one, though. Will we ultimately achieve those large numbers that have been assigned? Because you have to differentiate between doing the planning exercise that we are doing now. And by the way, I'm confident that virtually all of Marin will pass muster in doing that from what I'm hearing, as we have in the past. And notwithstanding Marin's reputation, we've never really not had an accepted housing element. By all accounts, we're going to be able to do that again here. But let's face it, it's very challenging to meet these high numbers. And I would say right now, if the past is any guide, those numbers likely will not be met, because at the end of the day, a lot of issues and decision making go into how many housing units ultimately get built, right? It's the decision of the private market, of developers, of is there adequate funding? And again, I think that's where government can play a role. It's around allowing local communities to have land use decisions. I think the mindset is changing in that people get the need, but I think people are looking for leaders to come up with creative solutions. Yeah. Again, that's what's exciting to me. I think we have the potential to do that right now. But if I had to crystal ball it, are we gonna for sure meet these high numbers? I think it's gonna be very hard.
Yeah, I think that watching everything play out well, this is my optimistic perspective. I feel like Marin, I feel like with you understanding really our local area and Sonoma as well, I feel like we can bring forth some interesting ideas that are like new solutions that are sort of, here's how we could maybe put the Marin Sonoma spin on some of these true issues that do need to be addressed while also addressing climate change. I think will be interesting.
I agree. And that's where state law will need to adapt to that. Because right now, if you look at how RENA is calculated, a lot of these solutions are not included in the number. So that's something I'm very much interested in. Yeah. And as you said, continuing to be the leaders that we are on broader issues like climate change.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think what we're talking about here is playing well into some of the questions I'm seeing pour into the Q&A. So shall we go into a few little rapid fire question round?
Let's do it.
Okay. So the first question is from Katie, and Katie is asking what you see as a pathway for enough water to build the homes that we need to build. So the water issue.
Yeah, and I would say again, such an important issue. It was interesting. So my race was a hot race. Literally, it was called that, but it paled in comparison to the water board races, right? That's really on people's minds right now. And what you saw was an interesting move toward change on the water board. Because I think people get that we need more solutions. So I think it's going to be a combination strategy, Katie. We're not just going to be able to conserve our way out of the issue, but that is an important aspect, I'll say, as an unabashed environmentalist. However, I'm very excited about other possible solutions, like more water recycling. I think that's going to be a real interesting source of possibly even state legislation to continue to encourage pilot projects around that, new technologies. So keep an eye on water recycling. And I think, again, we can be a regional leader in that. Rainwater catchment, I'll never forget kind of walking up door to door in Petaluma, and some at least a couple residents were like, hey, come around to my backyard, where they literally had home catchment systems with fairly large capabilities to do that. And I think that's a real a positive growth area as well. I'm not a huge fan of the pipeline idea. I don't see that really going anywhere at this point, particularly with the results of the elections. On the other hand, desalinization, again, many kind of challenges around energy use, environmental impacts. But the landscape seems to be changing there, at least regionally or more statewide. So that's something to potentially look at as well. An issue that hasn't gotten as much attention, but I think is important, is the state of our water infrastructure. Many communities, particularly underserved communities, are currently being served by substandard pipes. That's going to require a huge investment statewide. So that's something we need to look at. And then, as you mentioned, Logan, I think with Marin and Sonoma, there's also some unique opportunities around partnership, particularly around groundwater banking. And utilizing water when it's flowing more, banking it underground up in Sonoma County. This is not to say Marin would kind of get more than its fair share, so to speak, but truly working together as two counties under the existing allotment that Marin gets, but making sure that that's stored more effectively. So that's something that the two water or three water agencies, two in Marin, one in Sonoma, are currently talking about as well. So again, it's housing, but it's also agriculture, particularly up in Sonoma, where water is a make or break issue, as you can well imagine. So I am quickly getting even more up to speed on regional water issues.
Oh, I bet. And you're right that our water board race was hugely talked about in Marin this year. Do you feel good about our new water board?
I do. I got to know all of them during the campaign. I think you have a ton of just hit the ground running experience in that new board. And I think, I'm very optimistic about it.
Yeah. Knowing the energy of the new board members, I think water is something that we'll actually start talking about solutions, which is exciting.
It really is.
Yeah, we have a question here, a couple of questions from Susan Van Leer. The first relates to solar, which I'll roll in with another question. So when we're talking about climate and actions that we can take to reduce our impact, obviously solar is a big one, and the electrification of homes and kind of making a turn in that direction. What is your viewpoint on, what the will of people in Marin and Sonoma, what you're hearing on these topics, and B, how you think that will kind of come to play in your time?
Those are great questions. And I'm a huge fan of solar and renewable energy. As some of the listeners may remember, I was one of the co-founders of Marin Clean Energy, and have very much been pushing for local distributed energy solutions, and statewide pushing for more renewable energy. Recently, for example, I opposed the move by the PUC and PG&E to tax rooftop solar. I think that's the wrong approach. I think we should be incentivizing that as much as possible for homeowners. I'm going to actually be pushing to serve on the Utilities and Energy Committee in the Assembly to really dig even deeper on those issues right now. So that's something I would love to continue to work with you on.
Yeah. On
going toward electrification of our homes and buildings, it's also something that I've been a fan of and working on as a county supervisor with my colleagues. I think there is a growing consensus around new construction. There's more of an issue of how do we transition? So is it at time of sale? Is it a major upgrade or the like? I think those issues are continuing to be worked through in a so-called transition, if you will. I think we also need to be very cognizant of we're talking about potential home owners at different income levels, right? Not everyone can afford that full-on transition right out of the box. So I think we have to be mindful of all that. So this is an area where I'm very interested in the continuing dialogue and working with you all on coming up with the best policies. But I think underscoring all these moves is really the idea that we have to take some bold steps, given the climate crisis that we're facing. And that, again, I think we can be a leader in that regard if done the right way.
Right. Absolutely. And that's something that we would love to work with you on kind of as the conversation unfolds, because it's an interesting one. I should say right here as a good advocate that we always have concerns about point of sale, right? Point of sale kind of requirements. And that's something that I think often comes up as we talk about changes that need to happen. But we see it as kind of an inefficient way to get things done because properties don't turn over very quickly. But at the same time, I think this is something where talking about how we actually can see action moving forward in a way that makes an impact. That will be a cool discussion. All right.
I agree.
Yeah. Yep. We have a question from an anonymous attendee, and the anonymous attendee is wondering how the SMART train is rolling along. Do you think it's getting enough riders to support the system?
Yeah, a great question, and it kind of ties into everything else we've been talking about. So the answer is SMART is doing perhaps surprisingly, or if not amazingly well right now, because it was kind of being delivered last rites for a while, as you know, the tax measure failed, and I think folks were raising some legitimate issues, and then the pandemic hit. The fact of the matter is SMART has actually never been in better financial condition. And I think that's attributed in part to some really strong new leadership, a new general manager. Of all the Bay Area transit systems, believe it or not, SMART is actually now one of the best performing in terms of ridership, getting back to at or near what it was pre-pandemic. That didn't happen by accident. One of the key things, I think, lessons learned by SMART was around things like cost. Were the high fare prices back in the day limiting ridership? The answer was yes. So SMART has strategically kind of significantly cut its fares, like in half, and has continued that. It reinstated weekend service. It's going to have to be nimble. Look, we all get, I think, that commute patterns, how people work may never go back to completely how they were. At the same time, traffic is back. And that's in part because although there are probably net fewer cars on the road, congestion is now as bad as it was because fewer people overall are taking public transit. Regional bus service is down. There are few people on the ferry, although that's increasing now. But I think as congestion returns, people are going to be looking at those alternatives again. And in the case of SMART, it's not just people going to and from work, it's students. Believe it or not, there's a huge contingent of students between the two counties who use it and people who are using it for leisure or tourism, which I think will be a growth area strategically for SMART going forward. So SMART ridership is on the uptick. The fare structure seems to be working. And so I am actually I'm on that board, at least for another week. But I'm pretty optimistic right now. We will continue to plan on getting it north, which has always been one of the promises for the system, starting with Windsor, then Healdsburg, and then potentially ultimately Cloverdale. And another interesting area for SMART is the possibility of traveling east and west along the Highway 37 corridor. That's something the state is very interested in seeing to link that rail service from the North Bay over to the Capital Corridor line in the East Bay. So keep an eye out for that as well. But I'm certainly open to any feedback on SMART, any concerns about it or ideas. But I would say right now, even by the account of some of the biggest critics of it over time, and oftentimes for legitimate reasons, those folks are even kind of turning around a little bit, I think, right now.
On a related question from Joe Burns, along with energy and climate, you have been a leader in transportation. And Joe would like to know what you are expecting in advancement of the Highway 37 corridor this coming year and just infrastructure in Marin specifically in general.
Yeah, so this is the time where we really need to be pushing these just kind of long-standing solutions, right? The commute on Highway 37 is a nightmare. We know that, the Richmond Sanderfeld Bridge is a big issue. The notion that we've been talking about for years and years of connecting Highway 101 to 580, right, to get to the Richmond Bridge, to actually provide a direct connector from northbound to eastbound. There. Highway 37 is going to be a huge focus, and it's really a 4-county focus along with the state, regional, state, and federal levels of government. Mm-hmm. It's going to be as much an environmental project as a transportation project, and that is oftentimes the case now with these major transportation projects. In this case, we know there are sensitive wetlands out there. It's a great opportunity to continue to enhance those to help habitat out there. But I also firmly believe that we have to address essentially the nightmare commute now of tens of thousands of people every day that are stuck in that have a real world impact on people's lives, their families, on businesses. So it's going to be, how do we get to the ultimate solution that everyone's agreeing is the best way to go? And that's a causeway that's elevated, that accomplishes a lot of these goals that I just outlined, but at a price tag of about $8 billion from what we're hearing. So what can be done in the interim that's not inconsistent with that, but that provides relief in the shorter term as well. So I think those are the parameters that we're kind of dealing with. There's some related issues around should that road be tolled right? Toll road. And if so, how? So there was some legislation around that last year that may get reintroduced. It remains to be seen, but yeah, I would say that's a huge issue right now.
Absolutely. Okay, well, in these last couple of minutes here, I am going to ask you a couple of we can do a little quick question and quick answer to
Sure.
try to get to, let's try to get to 3 more in 4 minutes. Okay, so to circle back to the topic of solar and energy for a moment, Susan is wondering what your position is on the revised CPUC plan. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I haven't fully studied the latest, but yeah, I as I indicated earlier, I have not been a supporter of the CPUC plan to implement what effectively would operate as a tax on rooftop solar. I think I understand the issues, and certainly we need to look at equity no matter what solutions we come up with. But I think fundamentally right now we should be incentivizing more rooftop solar for a number of reasons. And thus, I have not been a fan of the CPUC approach.
Okay. And question from West Main. What will it take to decommission San Quentin and better utilize this land?
That's a great question. That's been kind of bandied about for years and years, because certainly that land has a lot of potential. My sense, though, is I do not see San Quentin closing anytime soon. On one hand, it certainly is a facility, and having just toured it, I would say within the last couple months, I can vouch for it's very old. It's very outdated in many ways, although they have enhanced certain things like the medical facility. The challenge in closing it, though, is it really does operate almost as a unique prison within the California state penal system, in that there's not even a close second. Literally, the programming there, the opportunity to help inmates turn their lives around is second to none there. I mean, just they actually have a fully operating college at San Quentin. I was not aware of that until learning more about it. So San Quentin has essentially been revamped. It's not how we often thought of it 10, 20 years ago. It's now literally a way for people to utilize programs and really turn their lives around, whether they're going to get out or not. So that having been said, though, I think the land in and around San Quentin is certainly still intriguing for other types of community uses or partnerships. You may be familiar with the Oak Hill proposal, which would be for teacher and workforce housing on state land near San Quentin. In fact, I'm going to be speaking on that with Senator McGuire in a couple of days. I think that's a very interesting proposal around housing there. But yeah, I think the overall conversation around the future of San Quentin is ongoing, but it's not as black and white as you may think.
All right, well, we have 1 minute left, and I am seeing in the chat that there are so many topics that we can cover. So I feel like in all your free time, I feel like we should have you back at some point, Damon, because
and also let me just throw out, look, I'm going to be your local person. So if anyone wants to grab coffee or set up a Zoom or meeting, please feel free, and absolutely, Logan, feel free to invite me back as well.
Awesome. And what is the best way for us to support you and reach you in your new role?
I can certainly give you my cell phone right now, and also my email. So best personal email is damon@damonconnolly.com, and phone number is 415-250-6127. We're in the process of hiring staff, which will include a scheduler. up in Sacramento, and we will also have district offices, as Assemblymember Levine did, in both Marin and Sonoma counties. So my office locally here will be one floor up in the Civic Center. So that'll be kind of cool. And then we'll also have a Sonoma County presence as well.
Very cool.
John's asking if I can repeat my cell, 415-250-6127.
Thank you. Perfect. And we will also see you in May. So everyone who is here, you may be interested in joining us. Every May, the California Association of Realtors does a legislative day, and we bring a Marin group together and we go up to Sacramento and we'll come bug you in your new place. So just for the benefit of everyone who's listening in, Legislative Day is very cool and very interesting. It's all about the things that we've been talking about today. And it's a great way for us to really see how things work in Sacramento and just to kind of be in tune with what's happening. So keep an eye out for that and feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about joining us for Legislative Day next year, to everyone who's listening. And Damon, thank you so much. This is awesome. Thank you for stepping up into the role. Thank you for all of the work that you've been doing. And just know that we're here to support you. So if there's anything that you need from the realtor community, you know where to find us. And I have a feeling we'll all be in touch.
Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Damon. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.